The BBC told us today that the EU definitely isn't punishing the UK for Brexit, but we know that they are. The BBC reported about the disappointing lack of progress with negotiations in the EU today, and they reported Brexit. May warned over disappointing progress in talks. Theresa May has been warned that time is running out to secure a Brexit deal as she prepares to face the other 27 EU leaders at a summit in Brussels. The PM will brief all her counterparts for the last time before October, when both sides hope a deal will be done on the UK's March 2019 departure. But Irish leader Leo Varadkar said the lack of progress was disappointing. Now, the claim here is that the politicians aren't making enough progress on EU Brexit negotiations. And you know what? I'd probably agree with that. In fact, I definitely agree with that, because we know the politicians haven't been doing a great job of this. They've been bickering about what kind of Brexit, hard Brexit, soft Brexit, in between Brexit, what kind of Brexit are we going to get? You know, they seem very, very confused about an extremely simple question that was asked of the British public in 2016. They asked us, do you want to leave the European Union, or would you like to remain in the European Union? We voted to leave. So given the wording of the referendum, given the entire narrative throughout the campaign, leaving the EU means leaving the customs union, the single market, everything, okay? That's what even David Cameron and all the Remainers told us. So now we voted to leave the EU, we better get on with doing it. But the politicians seem extremely confused, you know? Actually, let's be honest here, they're not confused, they're being purposely misleading because they don't want Brexit to happen. But the fact that the politicians aren't making good progress on negotiations does not mean that the EU isn't betraying us. It just means that the problem's being exacerbated. We've got difficulty with the European Union not wanting us to leave and trying to punish us, and we've got a problem with our own politicians betraying the will of the people and not getting on with it. Let's take a look at this video, by the way, from the BBC today. They produced a video that was in the article that I'm referencing, talking about why the EU isn't punishing the UK. They're wrong. We know they're wrong. Take a look at this.
Brexit negotiations are also hard going because of pure self-interest. Think about it. In any deal, whether it's business or political, each side naturally wants to come out on top.
I was described by one of my colleagues as a bloody difficult woman.
The British people will not be bullied.
So the EU would say it's not punishing the UK in negotiations, it's just looking after itself.
This claim that the EU isn't punishing the UK and that instead they're just looking out for their own interests is ludicrous. I'm fine with people looking out for their own interests. I mean, that's the whole point of Trump. That's what we're meant to be doing. Now we've left the European Union in Britain, but it doesn't seem to be happening. There are multiple examples of the EU punishing the UK ever since we voted Brexit in 2016. The first one being when a senior German MEP accused Michael Barnier, who's the chief Brexit negotiator, of planning to impose a bad exit agreement on Britain to make an example of us to other EU member states. Other politicians are seeing this. There's another story as well of leaked papers that were revealed showing the European Union was planning to impose sanctions and tax blacklists. Now, this is an interesting one, so let's go into it a bit more. The Express reported on this, and they said EU chiefs claimed in a presentation last week that they wanted a, quote, level playing field to ensure they counter clear risks to stop the UK slashing taxes and relaxing regulation. How dare the UK make its own decisions and relax some taxes? How dare the UK try and become competitive on the world stage? That's what I mean when I say they're punishing us. They don't want us to be more competitive. They want us under their control. It goes on, but astonishing papers reveal Eurocrats believe that the UK is too big and too close to treat it like a normal trading partner, so they are keen to enforce restrictions on state aid. So the Eurocrats believe that the UK is too big, potentially too competitive. So why exactly do they think that we couldn't survive on our own? It's interesting, isn't it? The document seen by the Financial Times reads, quote, international rules do not adequately address the potential distortive effects of subsidies on investment, trade and competition. The EU-UK agreement will have to include robust provisions on state aid to ensure a level playing field. But this isn't a level playing field. This is about punishing us. This is a punishment clause. And this is an attempt by the EU to create an environment artificially where the UK doesn't have any advantage over them. This is not just looking at self-interest, it's punishment, it's bitterness, it's a reaction to the fact that we decided no, we don't want to be restricted by European Union regulations anymore. And this is the nature of the EU. It's what they've always done. If you dissent against EU rules, if you dissent against EU plans and agendas, then they're going to punish you. I remember in Poland, the Polish government decided to approve new legislation that gave them more controls over their own Supreme Court and appointing judges and things like that. And as a result, what did the EU do? Well, they threatened to remove their voting rights. So they'd be members of the European Union, but they wouldn't even get their MEPs just rubber stamping the laws. They don't even get the illusion of democracy if they dare to challenge the rules of the EU. There's another case here as well of the Luxembourg finance minister when he told CNBC that many in Europe were looking to punish the UK. He spoke at the World Economic Forum and he said, "There are many people out there who are trying to punish the United Kingdom without saying it. If you ask them, they will deny it. Let's try to be more positive. Let's try to de-dramatize the whole negotiation." I see it, the rest of the British public sees it, and other ministers and members of European Parliament and politicians from across Europe see it as well. The EU is vindictive and spiteful, and it wants to punish the UK. The EU punishes member states who want to take control over their own legislative issues. It happened in Poland. They threatened to take away their voting rights, and they threatened the UK with punishment clauses if we dare try and compete with them after Brexit. Now, make no mistake, the European Union is punishing the UK, and nothing the BBC can say will change that fact. When the BBC smugly tells you that the EU isn't trying to punish the UK and that the only problem is Westminster, then remember this, remember Poland, and remember the fact that the entire European Parliament system is designed so that MEPs have zero control on proposing laws. All they get to do is rubber stamp things. The entire EU is set up, designed and structured to be authoritarian and top down. Dissent, and you're in a lot of trouble. The EU definitely is punishing us, and the traitors in Westminster are just making it easier for them.